Welcome to a Substack Live. I am joined by two of my friends from the United Kingdom, Cadwalladr and Peter Jukes. We're going to talk today about Trump's visit to the UK, about the rise of UK's version of MAGA, and about the sort of media environment that makes all this stuff happen on the far right. So, welcome both of you. Good to see you guys again so soon. We saw you a couple weeks ago in London, but um, I want to start with you, Peter. Talk to us about where you saw as somebody with byline that tries to look at the politics of Britain right now from a wiser angle. I think that a lot of the folks who just sort of have panicky coverage of like what's going on. Talk to us about where Britain stands today in the wake of this Trump visit. Did it save Starmer at all? Did it help him? What did the way that they played Trump on this trip work? Give us your take on it.
So just to tell you American viewers and my American cousins, our former colonial cousins, that London is safe. It's not a no-go zone. Rick, you wondered why you weren't sort of held at knife point. It isn't sort of run by Sharia law. So I'm afraid, people don't
hate to disappoint people.
London is a very mixed city, a very harmonious city. So where we stand, obviously, for 80 years, you've been Big Brother. We sort of a Runway 51. We purchased under a nuclear umbrella. We had a few umbrellas of our own, but not as big as
yes.
And the British state is founded on the principle better wrong with America than right with Europe. War, whatever you feel about it now, bit of fiasco. But Britain was a stalwart ally. So I think the state finds it very difficult to negotiate a world in which America is not some kind of occasional defender of freedom. Starmer, so obviously, a lot of this was optics of the king, sort of befriending Trump, who's quite susceptible to gold and bling and all this kind of stuff. And Carol maybe talk about the sort of tech and trade deals, which are quite worrying, especially with Teal and Palantir. But one thing I've learned that Starmer, he's under great criticism here. I think a lot of politicians in Europe, as economies sort of flatline,
sure,
as the right wing grows through their media ecosystem, centrist, old social democrats, centre rights are in problems. But I don't know. Carol might not agree. But apart from the trade deal, the key thing I think for us living close to the front line of Ukraine, certainly closer than you in Tallahassee, Rick, though you know well, is that Starmer keeps on pushing him over Ukraine. And there is a sense that I felt, and you'd know better, Rick, on this, he was slightly better behaved. Few royals around, you know what I mean? A bit of flattering unction. No more Peter Mandelson, unfortunately, with his lovely accent to sort of grease the way.
Very plummy.
Stuff was embarrassing. But that's my feeling. It's an impossible position, really, after 80 years being embedded in your, I went to say a rude word, embedded in the transatlantic alliance, for Britain to wake up and find that Big Daddy's a bad daddy.
Right. That disappearance of America as a bulwark in the background on trade, economics, diplomacy, security, NATO. It really has a fundamental sort of shifting nature. So, Carol, let me jump to you for a second. There was a lot of talk about the tech stuff. Trump brought his pet billionaires with him, and the AI question, the big data centers coming into the UK, all these things. Talk to us about how do you see that as an element of this whole visit?
Yeah, so I'm really interested, Rick, to hear from you about how the visit played out stateside. Whether that, because we've had a sort of orgiastic feasting on the sort of Marie Antoinette details of
right.
The banqueting hall and the menu and the gowns and it's sort of what the British media loves an occasion. When you roll out the royals, it means there's endless photos, there's endless footage. It's give us a royal wedding, a royal funeral, a state banquet. It's a poorer cousin. So that was overwhelmingly the sort of plus obviously it's the Trump of it, and in which I think the fear was just that could the government get through it without literally sort of shitting their pants, I think was the game plan. And as far as I can see, it's been a rollicking success because there's just been amazing pictures of royals and banquets and gilding, and then fabulous headlines because they announced this. It sounds like George Orwell wrote this headline, which is the tech prosperity deal. It's brilliant, isn't it? They might have just called it, the magic tech money tree deal, and it would have the same, be the same sort of idea behind it. So they've just had fabulous headlines of like billions here and billions here, and these cool sounding tech companies, and it's amazing.
But Carol, you mustn't forget another great British tradition is a protest. We have free speech here, by the way. We don't sack comedians from the airways for just being mildly critical of your king. And so one of the fun moments, wasn't it? It was projecting.
It was so brilliant. Kicking the Epstein footage up onto Windsor Castle. I mean, that was some great street art and a truly good protest.
And getting arrested for it as well, kind of possibly. Because this happens all the time in Britain. We love a bit of projecting. And and it's the first time, I think, or second time, actually, I think they've got arrested in the process. But so the tech prosperity deal is total smoke and mirrors.
Sure.
It's a load of deals, some of which were sort of slightly old, some of which were coming down the line. They've sort of bundled it up to make it look like this incredible political coup. And we have, but more worryingly, first of all, as we know, AI is an extractive industry. It takes
100%.
Existing value in the form of IP, in the form of data sets. It usually just sucks it up illegally. And then whatever value it's created doesn't go to the host country. It gets transported back to the companies. And so they've been boasting about the number of jobs created. The one thing we know about these data centers is they create tiny numbers of jobs while sucking up, as I say, not just our data sets, but our water supply, our electricity. So that's one aspect of it. The second aspect of it is there's a quid pro quo, which was done here. There's a quid pro quo. We don't yet know what that quid pro quo is.
Bro quo? Do you say bro
quo? Exactly. It's a quid pro quo. And but we suspect certain things. And one of the things that I am most suspicious about, most alarmed about, and really scared about is the fact that they are seeking. We know that this government, in anticipation of exactly this Smoke and Mirrors Act, has been anticipating tearing up our copyright laws, which are, I think they go back to 1792, I think it is. And it's I think, it's a basic property law. It's you can't go into somebody's house and steal their silver, take their TV. In the same way, intellectual property is just property. And, we know that the government is absolutely seeking to undermine that in order to give this sweetener to the companies coming in. We know also that the data sets in things like our National Health Service are immensely valuable because hugely valuable. We're the only, sorry, I'm wittering on, but I'll stop. Just to define why Britain is so critical for the entire sort of health AI industry is we're one of the very few countries in the world which has got this. We've got health records for the entire population from the cradle to the grave as one single data set. And that is the what you can do with that in terms of training AI is
enormous.
Just
Go ahead, Peter.
Yeah, I was just going to say on that, Palantir, which is
that's
founded by a rather strange and interesting person who's fascinated by the Antichrist at the moment, Peter Thiel, got what has now the biggest data contract with the NHS, as Carol points out, which has got a data set going over 80 years or 75 years of 60, 70 million people. Well, more, consider the ones who died. And Palantir and Thiel is all over British politics at the moment. We've documented his inroads to reform, think tanks, and the Conservative Party. And this week, we actually spoke to Lord Glasper, who's a Labour peer, the only one to go to the inauguration, only Labour lawmaker. And he met with Thiel and Curtis Yarvin. Curtis Yarvin, the ideologue behind Thiel, who believes uses the N-word endlessly, has some weird theory about race and science.
And neo-monarchist as well, for a guy who believes that we should create a tech monarchy in America.
Exactly. He's here. He's having a debate on Sunday with the former, you may know of him, former chief press spokesman and communications officer Tony Blair, Alistair Campbell, a big media.
Of course, yeah.
So they're coming, Rick. They're coming. Why do you let these people over here?
This is the question that I wanted to sort of brief our American audience on a little bit, folks.
Yeah.
In the UK, traditionally there was, and this is a very broad brush. There were traditionally the Tories, the Conservatives, the Republicans, and the Labour Party. Broadly, the Democrats. Now, the UK the Tory party has essentially collapsed. The Labour Party is in power, but clinging on to it by the skin of its teeth. And while these people have very few seats in Parliament, the Reform Party, led by a guy named Nigel Farage, who you probably have seen on Fox News at some point in America, they are looking moderately well positioned to take power in the UK. And folks, Farage is like MAGA without the sophistication and deep intellectual backbone. So talk to us about the possibility that MAGA is going to take power in Britain. What do you think the implications of that are? And since we talked at last when we were over there, I've been thinking about, like, how do you throw some obstacles into the path of this thing, given that Labor seems to be falling into the same culture war traps, immigration and other things that the Democrats in America have fallen into.
Sure. Well, I mean, thank you, Rick, for raising that question. And I think, one of the things since I've been sort of reporting on this beat, if you like, around the relationship between Brexit and Trump, between a sort of these shady data and Russia and data analytics companies such as Cambridge Analytica, and sort of like what happened in those elections. And the whole thing is that right from the very start of my reporting around that, there was absolutely this very, very tightly enmeshed relationship between these major figures in MAGA, in Trump's campaign, and in Britain. And this relationship between Nigel Farage and Steve Bannon at the time was sort of like very essential to that. And I just want to paint a little scene for your viewers who probably wouldn't have noticed this so much. But on Saturday in Britain, we had our biggest far-right rally for generations.
Right.
And I think it was more than 110,000 people. And it was led by somebody who's significantly even further to the right than Nigel Farage.
Right.
So this guy called Tommy Robinson. And this rally was absolutely amplified and lifted up by Elon Musk, who spoke at it.
Right, he jumped in on a video chat.
And I think it's the helpful thing I've been thinking about it is I think it spooked a lot of people in Britain who are living in a sort of like state of complacency. We are looking across the Atlantic at what is happening in America, and from the outside, it is, chilling and scary and deeply concerning. And it's also abroad, it's foreign, it's away, it's far enough away. And it feels there's that sort of unreality of the way that we look at what's going on there. And I think, like, we really, really have to understand that we have been subject to exactly the same forces, which have been amplified and magnified on exactly the same tech platforms, that there is exactly the same money interests we know and foreign interests behind both, that we really have to consider these as a joint project. And so I went slightly off from the Farage of it. But it's, I think one of the key things at the moment is that Farage isn't even the scariest person out there. We really are. That Overton window is shifting so far to the right that what is considered now acceptable discourse in Britain is unrecognisable from what it was, just a few years ago.
Yeah,
just to big up Cal.
Go ahead,
because Cal spotted this in 2017-18 with a Cambridge Analytica revelations And I went with a little bit on them, but she also pinged that to Farage, Trump saying Mr. Brexit plus plus plus. And she revealed, in fact, her revelations probably knocked about 75 billion off the share price of Facebook, because we were hacked. I was hacked through Facebook, through this
Everybody, yeah.
digital life hack. But nobody did anything about it then. And since then, Carol has been a bit like Cassandra, saying, and I said 3 years ago, it's going to fuck everything up. These big tech platforms owned by oligarchs are completely distorting and changing our news, our information source. We have an information
100%.
capacity. And that rally on Saturday, Tommy Robinson, aka Stephen the Yaxley Lemon, is not that man of the people, Yaxley Lemon, actually an Irish citizen, is a multiply convicted criminal.
Right.
Elon Musk went on a platform with him remotely, albeit remotely, to say, you must bring down the government. Now, I know you do that in America sometimes, capital insurrections here, but I think it's pretty unheard of in our history to have a foreign oligarch. Rupert Murdoch didn't even say bring the government down. He did it stealthily through sort of...
Right. He's more subtle, but...
Yeah. So I think you're right, Carol. I think it has woken us up. And to what Carol has been saying for years.
But can I ask a question? Do you think in America, so, you've got this kind of incredible engaged audience. Do you think, is that UK sort of US access sort of visible? Is it of interest? What's the take on it?
I think the reason people have noticed it more lately, and I don't think it was as present in people's consciousness until recently, but they're watching the same story play out based around immigration in particular, and a media apparatus. Part of it was the Rupert verse in America, and part of it is the Rupert verse there, that has turned immigration into this front and center scare issue. And as you pointed out, Peter, if you watch or read that segment of social media and that segment of media, you would think that London is burqas wall to wall, and the city is basically the call to prayer 24 hours a day, and there are car bombs going off every 5 minutes. It's nothing of the sort, of course, but they're great at combining that media apparatus and the social media apparatus, just as they do here, into a bubble that surrounds a lot of lower educated voters, not stupid people, folks, just folks who are not as immersed in politics, and convincing them that the world is burning. And I think there have been people here in the States noticing it more now because they are watching the same story playing out. Somehow they just took people who come there in boats from North Africa and turned them into, water Mexicans for the British audience. And it's the same like over the top terrorist, or they're all drug smugglers, human traffickers, murderers, rapists, all that. And it requires a machine around it, a social media and a paid media machine that builds a bubble around a lot of people's brains. And I think the pro-democracy movement in America is noticing it now. They're starting to pay a little more attention to the fact that Russian objectives in Europe and Russian objectives here to put friendly people in office, they're real. They were a real thing then. They're a real thing now. It's not a hoax.
And the other thing is that, this is a sworn and a known ideology, a plan. I had this amazing quote from Peter Thiel recently, I found. I don't know how recent the quote is. To build a national identity, you need to find scapegoats, right? And you found that, with Mexicans, LGBT people, whatever, mainly Mexicans in America. And the paradox is, Nigel Farage created this problem, right? By leaving Brexit, we didn't have the deal anymore, the Oxford deal with France about migrants. So suddenly you're getting these people. So what a populist does is he amplifies a problem, right? Moves on, create another problem, which they then amplify. It's like the opposite of Republican politics,
right,
which is a policy that solves things. It's an escalating more and more problems. You can see why Peter Thiel eventually believes we've got the Antichrist, we're heading to apocalypse, because there is no practical solution. And the only thing I'd say about the Labour government, they've got 4 more years to go. They've got a massive majority in the House, right? They could change leader. The Conservatives would just change leader every year. It's not immediately a constitutional crisis in the same way it would be if there was an election coming.
Yeah.
Yeah, But maybe, I mean, it's interesting because I think one of the things as well about this state visit, which it highlights, which is that the sort of the sucking up, the fawning to Trump, okay, which is, classed as diplomacy. It is obviously it's self-interest.
Hmm.
Starmer is trying to keep Trump in his good graces in order to get the better trade deals.
Right.
And that in itself is sort of highly problematic. You
Sure.
understand the reasons behind it, but we are not acting as the counterweight to the defamation of democracy that is happening in America. And we are subject to the same, what we're talking about, the same money, the same forces. I mean, one of the things, which we can now see again, which has really helped us understand the problem more clearly, is the way that Musk is so obsessed with Britain. He's obsessed with Britain. He's obsessed with
Isn't that interesting?
It's like, yeah. What do you make of that? Rick? What's your take on what you think is behind that?
Look, Elon is part of he's not really a Yarvanite in the traditional sense, but he's part of this white replacement theory subgroup inside American conservatism. And, he still looks at, Albion and England's green and pleasant land should not have brown people in it. It's the same sort of South African mindset weirdness that affects a lot of these guys in Musk's circle. And I think that he also looks at it as a smaller, less. I think he thinks that there are fewer inputs to manipulate in the UK than there are in America.
Yeah,
and there's
he won't lose his contracts. He won't lose his SpaceX contracts,
right?
Either. And one thing Carol discovered, on her great revelation about Bannon and Cambridge Analytica and Farage's Bannon. I remember I met the whistleblower she called Chris Wiley. Yeah. He called it Cambridge Analytica because calling things English or Cambridge and a bit of Latin in there, and I've lived in the US for a while, it gives you 10 IQ points. So the idea that culturally you could get Britain to vote Brexit, right, a populist, self-destructive measure. When that happened, Bannon was boasting about it, and what did Trump say? Mr. Brexit plus plus plus.
Right.
So unfortunately, I think we're a target because we share the same bloody language.
Yeah, and actually, that's interesting as well. So if you look at the J.D. Vance holiday in the Cotswolds this year, and one of the people he met who fits into exactly this sort of mold is this guy called James Orr.
Yes.
You've heard of him. Yeah, he's this theologian who's at Cambridge University.
Mm-hmm.
Speaks in those wonderfully, quite posh, upper class, sort of erudite tones around really quite extreme right wing views.
Sure.
But it's that way you can see with J.D. Vance, which is that it's dressing up these sort of like nativist beliefs with fancy academic language, which does make it sort of elevates it. It does, brings a sort of veneer of respectability to much of it, I think.
As my friend Stuart Stevens always talks about, never underestimate the power of race in Western politics. It's there. It's always under the surface. In America, it's particularly bad. And there are a lot of people like Bannon who a few years ago figured out you don't have to use a dog whistle. You can use a dog air raid siren. You can make it louder and louder and more obvious because there are a lot of people from that social media bubble they're put in. And look, that's an old story in American politics. Richard Nixon in 1968, that message, I'm going to clean up the streets, was not, I'm going to make you safer. It's, I'm going to get the black people and keep them out of your neighborhood. And that through line is powerful.
But we had a big moment. I can just barely remember. Carol is far too young to remember all this. Enoch Powell. There was a right-wing conservative politician, a potential candidate for prime minister. And he made this famous speech in Birmingham talking about rivers of blood because of immigration. He was disowned by the conservative establishment. He was marginalized, Labour. There were dockers. It was like Bannon recognized this is a working class thing as well. Bannon, when he met Glassman, they agreed that the working class should come together, maybe not on racism. But there were dockers marching in support of Enoch Powell. Friends of mine were attacked by skinheads the next 10 years.
Right.
All that language was banned, though. And it's only now coming back. Then you feel, Cal, there's kind of things that are said on television, especially our GB News, our oligarch-funded GB News channel, which we had as our sort of Fox equivalent, were impermissible. And I think you're right. Race is there. Race, 30% of people, maybe all of it racist in some way, but some people are racist against minorities. But it was socially controlled. There was a sense they would mutter.
There were boundaries in your culture that are less present in America now than they've ever been in my lifetime.
Can I talk about one thing which was really striking when I watched a bit of the rally which happened on Saturday, and sort of get your steer on that, Rick, because I flicked it on and I just posted the video actually of this speaker in my Substack newsletter, which is Valentina Gomez. Have you come across her?
She is, as my grandmother would say, crazier than a shithouse rat.
I love your grandmother, by the way.
My grandmother she was a rock star. But Gomez is a character that would only exist today because she has relevance only because of social media. Nothing else about her is sane or acceptable or palatable, and she'll never win elected office no matter where she goes. It's like she and Laura Loomer have run for Congress 2-3 times at this point now. And they're so nuts, no one's ever taking them seriously. But on social media, they're treated as mainstream thinkers in the MAGA influencer space. So, yeah, you're going to see a lot of these folks, especially now because Charlie Kirk was this very, almost a singularity in the MAGA influencer world. He was primus inter pares in that by far. Now they're all sort of competing to be the replacement and who can be the most crazy again. And I think it's really a dangerous and weird place. It's a bad place to live. But, well, guys, I have to say this. I really appreciate you coming on today. We only had a half hour today, and I regret that. We're going to have to schedule a longer talk next time because I do want to figure out how we save the West from these insane people. And I think Britain has got a major role to play in this as we go forward.
Yeah, well, the thing I was going to say is what was so striking was with her is that this Christian nationalism, which is now coming to the UK, which, you know, that was the thing which felt sort of unbelievable because we are not a religious nation in the same way that America is.
No.
Ain't gonna fly that ain't gonna fly.
Well, it was at the rally.
But I will give you one clue to watch for. Watch for the sudden emergence of Pentecostal churches in the UK. If you see that coming, there's a deeper shift, and it's much more pernicious and dangerous because that's the source of a lot of the white exclusion theory and trad wives and all this other craziness. Well, guys, thank you so much for coming on. I really appreciate it. Carol, Peter, I will see you guys again very soon, I hope. Thanks, folks. And thanks to everybody for tuning in today. Really appreciate it. We'll see you again next time. Thanks, everybody.
Yeah, brilliant. Thanks so much.